The night my world cracked open was not a dramatic or cinematic moment. It wasn't thunder, lightning, or a slammed door. It was a quiet dining room in the center of Manhattan, a place where people whispered over crystal glasses and soft violin music drifted up from speakers hidden among velvet drapes. My daughter sat across from me, her shoulders tight, her smile thinner than a thread ready to snap. And as the candle flickered between us, I felt an instinct I had ignored for too long begin to scream inside my chest. My name is Marian Halley, 58 years old, mother, widow, retired school counselor. I thought I understood people, especially the ones I raised. But nothing prepares you for the moment you realize the child you protected for decades is now enduring storms you can't shield her from. We were gathered for a small celebration, my grandson's 4th birthday dinner. My daughter Alina, her husband Victor, his rigid parents, and me. I arrived early as I always do, wearing the dress my late husband bought me years ago, a small comfort wrapped in navy blue fabric. Alina entered the restaurant with Victor close behind her. She held his arm, but it looked like the grip of someone clinging to a railing during a storm, not a gesture of affection. Her beige sweater seemed too warm for the spring weather, but that wasn't what caught my attention. It was her eyes dimmed, hollowed like someone had turned down the brightness inside her. "Mom," she whispered, kissing my cheek. Her lips trembled. "Honey, you look tired." "I'm fine, just a lot going on." Victor offered a polite nod, the kind that says everything and nothing at all. I'd always found his courtesy cold, like a marble statue carved with the idea of manners but none of the warmth behind them. We took our seats. Victor's father dominated the conversation, speaking loudly about finances and politics. His mother, a quiet shadow of a woman, barely said a word. Alina stayed small, too small, like she was trying to disappear into the chair. When she reached for her water glass, her sleeve slipped up barely an inch. I saw it. A faint band of bruising along her wrist, a partial imprint of fingers. My breath caught. Her eyes darted to mine, pleading silently before she tugged the sleeve back down. Dinner continued in strained politeness until dessert arrived, wrong by a mere oversight. When the server set down pecan tart instead of cheesecake, Alina shook her head gently. "It's okay," she told the server. "I'll have this instead." But Victor's hand tightened around the edge of the table. "Alina, you know I ordered cheesecake for you." "It's fine, really." "You always do this," he whispered harshly. "You never listen." His father chuckled like it was entertainment. And then, without warning, Victor grabbed Alina's hair and yanked her backwards so violently her head jerked like a rag doll. Gasps rippled across the room. My daughter made a sound I had never heard, half sob, half swallow, as tears spilled down her cheeks. That was the moment something ancient and fierce inside me rose like a tide. Before I tell you what I did, you need to understand the woman my daughter used to be, because the person at that table was only her shadow. Have you ever seen someone you love disappear right in front of you? Keep reading, because Alina wasn't always the woman trembling under someone else's hand. Before that night in the restaurant, before the fear embedded itself beneath her skin, my daughter was a force of nature. The Alina I raised was sunlight, warm, unapologetic, and brilliant in ways she didn't even understand. She came into the world on a crisp October morning, fists clenched, lungs full of fight, as if she had arrived with a mission already tucked inside her tiny chest. When Alina learned to walk, she didn't wobble, she marched. When she asked questions, she didn't accept half answers, she pushed until truth spilled out. She could draw for hours, often sketching elaborate houses and structures she'd imagine into existence. I remember once finding her underneath the dining table with crayons, designing a castle for people who feel lonely. She was 8. Her father, Daniel, adored her. "Our girl has steel in her," he'd tell me, pride glowing in his eyes. "But it's the kind that bends, not breaks." He believed she'd change the world, and honestly, so did I. Alina breezed through school, straight a student, architectural prodigy, and a young woman with dreams that stretched higher than the skyscrapers she loved to study. She got her first internship at 19, her first full-time job at 23, and her own apartment the following year. She was independent, confident, self-driven. She laughed loudly, lived freely, and took up space without apology. Then she met Victor Hale. It began innocently enough: flowers, thoughtful messages, slow dates in cozy cafes. He seemed attentive, generous, patient. Someone who listened. Someone who made her feel cherished. I remember her lighting up when she talked about him, her cheeks flushing with excitement. "Mom, he's different," she said during one of our Saturday breakfasts. "He pays attention, he respects my work, he makes me feel safe." I had no reason to doubt her. Victor was charming when he needed to be, handsome, articulate, polite. But there was something beneath his eyes, something that didn't quite settle with me, a sharpness, a calculation, a hunger for control disguised as admiration. When he proposed, Alina said yes, and I didn't object. Why would I? She deserved love. She deserved joy. Their wedding was elegant, almost too perfect. When I handed her over, Victor whispered, "I'll take care of her." At the time, I thought it was a promise. It was a warning. The first year seemed normal, though Alina slowly began giving pieces of herself away, tiny pieces, almost unnoticeable at first. She turned down extra shifts, then late-night work sessions, then new projects altogether. "Victor prefers when I'm home," she'd say with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Does he prefer it?" I'd ask. "Or do you?" She'd brush it off. When she became pregnant with my grandson Leo, everything shifted. Victor insisted she take time off to avoid stress. Then he suggested quitting altogether. Little by little, Alina's world shrank until the only places she visited regularly were her home and the grocery store. And then came the isolation, the canceled visits, the excuses. "I'm tired, Mom. Leo's sick. We're busy today. I'll see you next week maybe." But whenever we did see each other, Alina had changed. She spoke softly. She moved carefully. She looked at her husband as if checking for permission. The brightness in her eyes slowly faded, replaced by something dull, something hollow. And I kept wondering when exactly the steel inside her stopped bending and started to crack. But the cracks didn't appear overnight. They deepened slowly, until the day I found something hidden that changed everything I thought I knew about their marriage. People often imagine that the truth arrives with dramatic force, slamming doors, shouted confessions, or an explosive discovery. But sometimes, it appears quietly, slipping into your hands when you least expect it. For me, the truth came in the form of a small beige envelope tucked beneath a stack of neatly folded dish towels in Alina's kitchen drawer. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon, and I had stopped by to help watch Leo while Alina took a nap. She looked exhausted, skin pale, dark circles under her eyes, shoulders drooping as if she carried the weight of an entire world on her narrow frame. "Just an hour," she whispered before retreating upstairs. Leo slept peacefully in his playpen, soft curls resting against his chubby cheeks. The house was spotless, too spotless. Not lived in, not messy with toddler chaos, but sterile, organized to the point of suffocation. I went to the kitchen to look for a bib and pulled open a drawer filled with folded linens. That's when I saw it, an envelope. No label, no name, just hidden as if waiting to be found or desperately hoping not to be. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. Inside were photographs. And my world split open. Each image was a piece of a nightmare, shaded bruises wrapping around Alina's forearms, dark marks blooming along her ribs, a handprint-shaped discoloration on her back, a cut on her lip, a swollen cheek, a fingerprint-shaped bruise on her throat, every injury documented, every wound captured, every photo dated, weeks, months, a timeline of suffering. I pressed a trembling hand to my mouth. The kitchen spun around me. I forced myself to breathe through the storm of rage and grief swallowing my chest. Why would she take these pictures? Because she knew. Because some part of her, buried deep beneath fear and denial, understood that she might one day need proof. That someone might finally believe her. I returned the photos to the envelope and placed it back exactly as I'd found it. My fingers shook so violently I could barely close the drawer. Minutes later, I heard soft footsteps on the stairs. Alina entered the kitchen rubbing her eyes, her hair messy from sleep. She looked younger in that moment, vulnerable, fragile in a way she never used to be. "Mom," she whispered. "You're pale, are you okay?" I didn't know how to respond. For a moment, all I saw were the images burned into my memory. Pain layered over pain, my daughter reduced to evidence. "Alina, honey," I said quietly, "is everything truly okay here?" She froze. The slightest pause, barely half a second, but it told me everything. Her eyes filled with guilt, fear, and something else, a pleading desperation. She shook her head quickly, forcing a brittle smile. "Of course, Mom, why wouldn't it be?" Her voice cracked. "Alina," I said gently, "if something is happening, anything at all, you can tell me." She wrapped her arms around herself as though trying to hold her body together. "There's nothing to tell," she whispered. "Please don't ask me things I can't answer." I stepped toward her, but she flinched, barely noticeable, but enough to rip something inside me. "Did he?" "No," she snapped. Then her face crumpled. "No, Mom, please, I can't. If you knew everything, it would only make things worse." Worse. The word echoed through the room like a warning. She wasn't denying it because it wasn't true. She was denying it because she was terrified of what admitting it might trigger. But that rainy afternoon was only the beginning. The signs I had ignored for too long were about to grow into something impossible to overlook, something that would force me to confront the truth head-on. After finding the envelope, nothing felt the same. The air inside Alina's house felt heavier, thicker, like it had been quietly absorbing every whispered apology, every hidden sob, every silenced plea. I left that day with a knot in my stomach, an uneasiness I couldn't swallow no matter how many times I told myself to calm down. Days passed. Then weeks. Alina's messages grew shorter, more mechanical. "Good morning, Mom, all good here. We're busy today. I'll try to visit soon." Every word read like a script she was forced to memorize. One afternoon, something inside me snapped. A mother's intuition doesn't fade, it sharpens. And mine was telling me Alina was drowning silently, so I drove to her house without announcing it. It was early evening. Victor's car wasn't in the driveway, which gave me a small breath of relief. I walked to the door, heart pounding, and rang the bell. No answer. I rang again, this time louder. Alina cracked the door open just enough to peek through. Her face appeared in the narrow gap, pale and startled. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to check on you," I said softly. "Can I come inside?" She glanced over her shoulder as if someone might be watching, despite the fact that we seemed alone. Then she reluctantly widened the door. "Only for a few minutes," she whispered. Moment I stepped inside, I felt the tension humming in the walls. The curtains were drawn even though daylight still lingered. A faint scent of lavender candles mixed with antiseptic cleaner, too neat, too controlled. "Alina, when was the last time you left the house?" I asked gently. She offered a small, nervous laugh. "You sound like a doctor." "I'm fine, Mom, really. You used to go for walks, visit your old coworkers. What changed?" "Leo keeps me busy. Home is easier." "Or safer?" I asked. Her expression flickered, fear, guilt, denial all tangled together. "Mom, don't start, please." I took a slow breath, steadying the urge to grab her and walk out the door. "Alina, I found something the last time I was here." Her entire body froze. She didn't blink, didn't breathe, just stared at me like a trapped animal who knows the trap has snapped shut. What did you find?" she whispered. "The photos." She crumpled onto the sofa as though her knees had given out. Her hands trembled as she covered her face. "I didn't want you to see those," she cried. "Alina, he's hurting you." "No, Mom," she shot up suddenly, panic stretching her voice. "Don't say that, you don't understand." "Then help me understand." She began pacing, wrapping her arms around her torso as though holding herself together. "It was my fault," she whispered. "I pushed him. I made him angry. He was stressed. Work has been awful. His father pressures him constantly." "I shouldn't have." "Alina," I stepped forward gently. "None of that excuses violence." She shook her head violently. "He's getting better." "Then why are there photos of injuries taken weeks apart? Why are you hiding them?" Her face broke. "Because I keep hoping things will change, because if I leave he'll take Leo. Or worse." The last word hung in the air. "Worse. Worse than bruises. Worse than fear. Worse than silence." "Alina," I whispered, panic spreading through my veins. "What do you think he would do?" She didn't answer. Instead, tears slid down her cheeks, heavy and unspoken. Then she whispered something so quietly I almost missed it. "He checks the cameras." I blinked. "Cameras?" She nodded toward the corners of the room. I looked up. Tiny devices. Black lenses glinting under the dim lights. Watching, recording, listening. "Alina, how many cameras are in the house?" "I don't know," she whispered. "He installed them everywhere except the bathrooms. He says it's for security, but he watches them." "He watches me." A chill crawled down my back. "Does he know I'm here?" I asked. "Yes," she breathed. "He gets alerts." My blood turned to ice. But what came next, the message he sent me after I left, proved that Victor wasn't just controlling her. He was watching me too. I left Alina's house that evening carrying a storm inside me. My hands trembled against the steering wheel as I struggled to process everything I had seen, the cameras in the corners, the shuttered windows, the way she moved like someone afraid to upset the air itself. She had always been quick to smile, quick to speak. But now she whispered. She flinched. She begged me not to stay too long. It was as if she lived inside an invisible cage and the door wasn't locked from the outside, but from the inside, with fear acting as the key. The sun had dipped behind the buildings as I reached my car. I sat still for several minutes, trying to calm my racing heartbeat. That was when my phone buzzed, a text message from an unknown number. I opened it slowly, dread swirling in my stomach. "Hope you enjoyed your visit. Next time, call first." No name, no punctuation, just a cold warning. My entire body went cold. I looked around the street instinctively, half expecting Victor to appear out of the shadows. No one was there. But the message told me everything I needed to know. He had been watching. He had seen me inside the house. He had listened. A wave of realization hit me. Every conversation I had with Alina that day had probably been recorded. Every whisper, every tremble, every confession, he might have heard it all. I drove home in silence, forcing myself to breathe, telling myself not to panic. But when I walked into my own house, the emptiness felt unsettling. I kept checking the corners out of habit, as if cameras lurked there too. My mind refused to settle. I poured a glass of water, but my hands shook too much to lift it. That was when I made my decision. I called Alina. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then her voice, a whisper, strained and rushed. "Mom, don't call." "Alina, he texted me," I breathed. "He knows I was there. Honey, you can't stay in that house." "Mom, please," she whispered, panic bubbling under her words. "I can't talk right now." "Alina, listen to me. You need to come stay with me, tonight, right now." "No," the word cracked like fragile glass. "If I leave without warning, Mom, you don't understand how angry he can get." "That's exactly why you need to leave." "Mom," her voice broke. "He said if I ever tried to leave him, he'd make sure I regretted it." My breath seized. "What does that mean?" She didn't answer at first. I heard soft, shaky breaths on the other end. Then she whispered, "It means he won't just come after me." Every muscle in my body tensed. "Alina, is he threatening Leo?" Silence. A silence so loud I could hear her swallow. "I have to go," she finally whispered. "Please don't call again tonight." The line clicked dead. I stood frozen, the phone still against my ear. The message Victor sent replayed in my mind like a haunting echo. "Hope you enjoyed your visit. Next time, call first." This wasn't just control. This wasn't just manipulation. This was surveillance. This was ownership. This was a warning. And warnings only exist when someone is preparing for escalation. I realized then something terrifying. Victor wasn't afraid of being discovered. He was confident. He believed Alina would never leave. He believed no one could stop him. He believed he had already won. But Victor underestimated one thing, a mother's instinct. And the very next day, I discovered something inside Alina's home that proved he was preparing for something far worse. Sleep didn't visit me that night. I sat in my living room with every light on, replaying Alina's trembling voice in my mind. Every instinct screamed at me to go back to her house, drag her and Leo out, and never look back. But I knew Victor. I knew his type, calculated, patient, and always 10 steps ahead. If I made one reckless move, I could put both of them in even more danger. By morning, I had made a plan. I texted Alina under the pretense of dropping by with groceries for Leo. I told her I would leave them at the porch and not come in. That wasn't true. I fully intended to step foot inside that house because there was something gnawing at me, something unfinished, something he didn't want me to see. She didn't reply at first. It took nearly an hour before she responded with a simple, "Okay." "Victor is at work, but don't stay long." Those words confirmed everything. When I arrived, Alina answered the door with forced calm like someone bracing for aftershocks. Her eyes flicked toward the camera above the door, small, black, and blinking faintly. It felt like a mechanical eye judging our every breath. She ushered me inside quickly as though she were trying to commit the smallest crime. "Mom, we can't talk long," she whispered. "He checks the footage." "I know," I said, lowering my voice. "Just let me help you with the groceries." Really, I wanted a moment to observe the house again. Leo played quietly in the living room. My sweet grandson, barely 4, already moved carefully, too carefully for a child his age. Children are open books, they reflect their environment. And his silence was a story I didn't want to read. As Alina went to get him a snack, I slipped down the hallway toward the closet near the stairs, the only door last time that had been slightly ajar. Something about that door bothered me. It had felt guarded. I glanced over my shoulder to make sure Alina wasn't watching and opened it fully. The breath left my lungs. Inside, where coats should have hung, were shelves. On the shelves were binders, rows and rows of binders, everyone labeled with precise handwriting. House expenses 2022, Alina's schedule year 1, food inventory, Leo, behavioral notes. My stomach churned. Then one binder stopped me cold. No, corrections and incidents. Corrections. Incidents. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside were printed spreadsheets, dates, times, lists of behaviors that Victor deemed unacceptable. Leaving dishes in the sink, forgetting to warm dinner, spending too long on laundry, speaking over him during a conversation. Next to each offense was a column labeled corrective outcome. Some were empty. Others had chilling notes, verbal reminder, consequence enacted, physical correction resolved. Escalation necessary. My vision blurred with rage. This wasn't just abuse. This was methodology. This was documentation. This was control so extreme it was practically ritualistic. And the final page was worse. A section titled Future Adjustments included chilling phrases: consider removing car access, reduce contact with outside influences, eliminate unnecessary freedom, plan for full household authority by end of year. I clutched the binder so tightly the edges dug into my palms. Footsteps. Elena, I whispered urgently, pushing the binder back into place. She appeared at the end of the hall, Leo perched on her hip. Her eyes widened when she saw where I was standing. Mom, what are you doing? I swallowed hard. Honey, what is all of this? Tears instantly filled her eyes. She pressed a hand to her mouth, shaking violently. I didn't want you to know, she choked out. He keeps everything in here. He calls it order. Please put it back. If he finds out we opened that. Elena, I whispered, stepping forward. This man is preparing to take away everything you have left. She nodded slowly, like someone finally accepting their drowning. I know, she whispered. And he's getting worse. But I didn't realize how much worse, until that night, when Victor came home hours earlier than expected and found something he shouldn't have. The air in the house felt like it had thickened, heavy with fear, thick with secrets that could suffocate anyone who breathed too deeply. After discovering the binders in the closet, I knew I couldn't stay long. Elena was trembling, Leo clung to her shirt, and I could practically feel the surveillance pressing against my back. Elena, I whispered, you can't keep living like this. We need to get you out. Her voice cracked. Mom, if I leave without a plan, he'll take Leo. He told me before. Say I'm unstable. He writes everything down to use against me. Of course he did. Every binder, every incident, every calculated note, it wasn't just control, it was preparation. Ammunition for a future battle he intended to win. I placed a hand on her cheek. We'll make a plan, we'll do it safely, you won't be alone. She nodded, though fear shadowed every inch of her. That was when we heard it, a car door slamming. Her entire body went rigid. No, she whispered, eyes wide. He's home, he's early, Mom, please go now. My pulse thundered in my ears. Where are your keys? She shoved them into my hand. Through the back, he never checks the backyard camera until later, please hurry. I didn't hesitate. A mother's instinct doesn't allow room for pride or stubbornness. I moved quickly, stepping into the kitchen, heading toward the sliding door that led to the garden. But before I reached it, the front door opened. Daddy's home, Leo chirped innocently, running toward the sound. Elena, Victor's voice cut through the house like ice. Why is my schedule moved? Why was the closet open? My stomach dropped, he already knew. I turned just enough to see him standing in the foyer, tall, rigid, his dark coat still on, briefcase dangling from one hand. His gaze swept the hallway with deadly precision. When his eyes landed on Elena, his jaw ticked. And then he saw me. For a fraction of a second, he froze. And in that tiny pause, I witnessed something terrifying behind his eyes. Not anger, not even suspicion, calculation. Marion, his voice was calm, almost eerily polite. Did you let yourself in? Elena stepped forward quickly. She just dropped groceries. Be quiet, he snapped, the calm veneer cracking for a moment. He turned back to me. I wasn't expecting company. Clearly, I replied, keeping my voice steady. I was just leaving. He stepped closer, too close. Before you go, I have a question. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. Did you touch anything in this house? Elena's breath hitched. She gripped Leo tighter. I forced a neutral expression. I brought food for my grandson, that's all. He tilted his head slightly, as if weighing the truth behind my words. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, waiting to be pushed. Finally, he smiled, a thin, sharp thing with no warmth at all. Good, I appreciate boundaries. Then he leaned forward slightly. His voice dropped low enough that only I could hear him. Stick to them. My blood turned to ice. I stepped backward toward the kitchen, toward the sliding door. Elena subtly nodded, urging me to escape before he found the binder out of place or remembered how the closet door had been left ajar. As I slipped out into the garden, Victor's voice floated behind me. Elena, we need to talk about your behavior today. My heart broke. Broken wasn't the right word. Shattered, splintered, pulverized. I hurried across the backyard, barely breathing until I reached my car. The moment I started the engine, tears spilled down my cheeks. This wasn't just abuse. This was entrapment, monitoring, psychological imprisonment. And if I didn't intervene, Elena would not survive this man. But I didn't know that the very next morning, something would happen that pushed everything past the point of return. Something that forced me to choose between obeying the law and saving my daughter's life. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a moment. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Victor's expression, the calculated calm, the tilt of his head, the threat buried behind polite words. I saw Elena's trembling hands. I heard Leo's innocent daddy's home, echoing like a warning none of us knew how to stop. By dawn, I had made my decision. If I didn't intervene soon, I would lose my daughter forever. The sky was still dim when I called Elena. No answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. Anxiety twisted my stomach into knots. She always answered my morning calls, even if it was just to whisper a quick hello. I sent a message, honey, please tell me you're okay. No reply. 30 minutes passed, an hour, then my phone vibrated, a message from her. One single line, "I can't talk, please don't come today." That wasn't her voice. It was too stiff, too formal. Words crafted carefully as if someone were dictating them. My heart dropped. I tried calling again, but this time the call didn't even ring. It went straight to user unavailable. Blocked. I grabbed my keys. Law or no law, boundary or no boundary, I was going to that house. The neighborhood looked painfully ordinary when I arrived, glittering morning dew, neat hedges, the scent of early spring flowers. But something felt wrong the moment I stepped out of the car. A tension in the air. A silence that seemed engineered. I approached the house and rang the bell. No answer. I rang again. Still nothing. "Elena," I called softly. "Honey, it's just me." Nothing. I walked around the side of the house toward the backyard, praying the sliding door might be unlocked. That's when I heard it, a thud, then another, a muffled scream. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Elena," I whispered harshly. Another thud. Then a crying sound, Leo's. Then a man's voice, low and furious. I didn't hesitate. I bolted to the sliding door and yanked the handle. Locked. "Elena." I shouted, pounding on the glass. "Open the door." A shadow moved inside, a figure, I couldn't make out who. I went to the back window, pressed my ear against the glass, and what I heard nearly brought me to my knees. Victor's voice, cold, venomous. "This is what happens when you disobey." Elena's voice, broken, pleading. "Please, Victor, please, not in front of Leo." Another crash. Leo's terrified sobs. That was it. Law be damned. I searched the garden quickly and found a heavy outdoor lantern made of cast iron. I lifted it with both hands, adrenaline roaring through me, and swung it hard against the sliding door. The glass cracked. Another swing. A fracture spread. A third, the door shattered inward. I stepped over the shards, breath wild, heart pounding out of my chest. Victor spun around. Elena was on the floor, shielding Leo with her body. Her cheek was red, swelling. Leo clung to her, sobbing. Victor stared at me, breathing heavily, fury twisting his features into something monstrous. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" He snarled. I didn't feel fear. I felt something deeper, primal, immovable. "I'm taking my daughter," I said, "and my grandson right now." Victor's eyes flicked to the broken door, then back to me. And in that moment, I knew he wasn't going to let them go. Not without a fight. But the police arrived before the fight could happen, and what Victor said to them almost convinced them to arrest me instead of him. The room was chaos, shards of glass glittering across the floor, Leo sobbing into Elena's neck, Victor breathing like a cornered animal preparing to strike. For a moment, none of us moved. The air felt electrified, thick with adrenaline and terror. Then, sirens. The distant wail carved through the house like a knife. Victor's head snapped toward the sound, and a sinister calm washed over his face, the kind that told me he had just formed a plan. "You called them, didn't you?" he hissed. "I didn't call anyone," I snapped. But he didn't believe me. Or maybe he did, maybe he knew he didn't need to. He raised his hands in a show of exaggerated surrender, then stepped away from Elena and Leo. As if on cue, he kicked a fallen chair across the floor, sending it skidding near where she was crouched, positioning the scene. Staging his innocence. "Get up," he barked at her. "Fix yourself." Elena didn't move. She looked too stunned to breathe. The sirens grew louder. 2 officers appeared at the broken sliding door within seconds, hands on their belts, eyes wide at the scene in front of them. "Step away from each other," one shouted. I raised my hands immediately. "Officer, please, my daughter needs help," Victor cut me off, voice trembling with false emotion. "Thank God you're here," he said, approaching them with the gait of a wounded victim. "She broke into our home. My wife and child are terrified." My jaw dropped. "That's a lie," I said, stepping forward. "He was hurting them. I heard," again, he interrupted. He was good at that, dominating the narrative before anyone else could speak. "She's been unstable," he said, pointing directly at me. "She's interfered with our family before. I've tried to be patient, but today she snapped." "You can check the footage. She smashed the door in with a metal object." Footage. Of course he had footage. "Officer," I pleaded, "look at my daughter, look at her face." Elena lifted her head slowly, revealing the swollen cheek, the red mark that stretched across it like a burn. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her arms still wrapped around Leo protectively. The younger officer's expression softened. He looked between us, uncertainty brewing. But Victor wasn't finished. "Elena, honey," he said gently, stepping closer to her, "tell them your mother is mistaken." Elena's breath hitched. Her eyes darted between the officers, Victor and me. She was shaking so hard I thought she might collapse. "Mrs. Halley," one officer said carefully, "we need everyone to stay calm." "She needs medical attention," I insisted. "He assaulted her," Victor's voice sliced through mine. "My wife fell," he said calmly. "She's been clumsy lately." You can check the closet. She knocked over a whole set of shelves earlier. I've been worried about her. That was manipulation at its finest, weaponizing her fear, her silence, her isolation. One officer pulled Victor aside. The other approached me. "Ma'am, breaking into a residence is a serious offense," he said. "Even if you believe someone inside is in danger, you can't act alone. You need to call us first." I heard him hurting her. What was I supposed to do? Wait until she ended up in a hospital bed? His expression wavered. But Alina was the one who changed everything. She rose shakily to her feet, Leo clinging to her shirt. "Officers," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "my mom didn't break in to harm anyone." Victor's eyes narrowed, warning her. She trembled, looked at Leo, then at me, then at Victor, and finally said the words that cracked everything open. She was trying to protect us. The room fell silent. Victor's face twisted. The older officer stepped closer. "Ma'am, is that true?" Alina inhaled deeply, gathering every last shard of strength. "Yes," she whispered. "It's true," Victor exploded. "Alina, do not, sir, step back," the officer ordered. For the first time, Victor obeyed. But what the officers asked Alina next would determine everything, whether she stayed trapped or whether she finally found her way out. The living room had gone quiet, an unnerving, trembling silence, as if the entire house itself was holding its breath. Shattered glass glittered across the floor. Leo clung to Alina like she was the only safe harbor left in the world. And for the first time, Victor stood frozen, not angry, not shouting, but calculating, waiting for the officers to make their next move. The older officer approached Alina gently, lowering his posture as if speaking to someone standing on the edge of a cliff. "Ma'am," he said softly, "we need you to answer one question. Your answer will determine how we handle this situation." Alina swallowed hard, her throat working through the panic. "Okay," she whispered. The officer nodded once. His voice dropped to a careful, grounded calm. "Alina, do you feel unsafe in your home?" Her breath caught. Victor took one step forward. "Alina, don't. Sir, step back," the officer snapped. Victor froze again. Alina closed her eyes. I could see the battle unfolding behind those eyelids, the fear, the loyalty she had been conditioned into, the shame, the exhaustion, the hope, and the desperate love for the boy clinging to her. Her mind was a battlefield of 1,000 contradictions. I whispered, "Honey, tell the truth." Her eyes opened slowly, red, swollen, trembling. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I do." Everything shifted. It was like the entire house exhaled, like the tension that had been coiled around her for years loosened a fraction. The younger officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, would you like to leave the residence with your child?" Alina hesitated. Her gaze flickered toward Victor, an instinct she couldn't break yet. He didn't yell, didn't move, didn't speak, but his eyes were full of promises, dark, silent promises. "Alina," I said, stepping closer, "you don't have to be afraid anymore." She took one shuddering breath and nodded. "Yes," she said, stronger this time. "I want to leave." The officers moved instantly, placing themselves between Alina and Victor. One guided Alina and Leo toward the hallway, the other approached Victor. "Sir, based on the statements made and visible injuries, we are detaining you until further review." Victor's calm facade shattered. "Visible injuries? She fell? I told you she fell." The officer didn't flinch. "Sir, turn around." "No, you don't understand. She's lying. She's..." "Turn around." Victor spun, rage radiating from him like heat. As the officer began handcuffing him, Victor's eyes locked onto Alina. "You think this is over?" he seethed. "You think she can save you from me?" I stepped forward so he could see only me. "I'm not saving her from you," I said. "She's saving herself." The officers led him out, his shouting fading into the distance until the front door closed and the house fell silent again. Alina collapsed to her knees, sobbing into Leo's hair. I rushed to her, wrapping my arms around both of them. For the first time in years, she didn't flinch from touch. She melted into me, broken, exhausted but free. We stayed like that until her breathing slowed. And then she whispered the words I had been aching to hear since the first bruise I didn't see. "Mom, I'm ready to come home." I held her tighter. "I know, sweetheart. And we're going to rebuild everything he tried to break." The officers gave us time before walking us out. As we stepped into the sunlight, Alina blinked upward as if seeing daylight for the first time in years. For the first time, her shoulders lifted instead of tightened. For the first time, Leo giggled softly, sensing the shift. For the first time, Alina didn't look behind her. She looked ahead, toward the future, toward healing, toward freedom. And in that moment, one truth settled over me. I didn't just save my daughter. She saved herself. She just needed someone to break the door open long enough for her to run.